Hello everybody, Thomas Fleming here again. Well, for this video I have a question. And this is a question for you to think about, not necessarily to answer. What would you do if you knew the world was going to end tomorrow, a week, a month? What would be your focus? What would you choose to do that maybe you haven't done? What would you give up? It's important that you be able to answer that because that day is coming. We don't know when, but it's coming. It's coming probably weeks or months away. Might be days, we don't know. There's so many things coming together, so many pieces that are intertwined coming together for this year. I don't know for sure it's this year, it could be next. But I think it could be this year very easily. It could be between now and the fall. So let's take a look at what your options are. Let's say you were working for some kind of a astrophysical company or agency, and you saw a new asteroid coming right at Earth. Do you know we have a blind spot? Our blind spot is wherever the sun is. We can't look into the sun looking for asteroids coming at us because they're not lit up. They're lit from behind, and we can't see them. We'd have as little as maybe 24-hour notice if we got lucky and spotted it. So if you're working for one of these companies and you saw it coming right at us and you knew that it was a day away, what would you do? Would you tell anybody? I suspect our government probably would not tell us because there's nothing we can do about it. No sense in panicking people. That's not a smart way to do things. That's a government way. Would you go spend time with your family? That's a short notice time frame, so you don't have a lot of other choices. I'm going to have to take something from my nose and sinuses. I want to sneeze when I get out here. The pollen's still not quite down yet. It's still up high enough that it's a problem. All right. Let's say you had a month. You spend a little bit of time with your family, or do you spend the whole time? What if you don't have family? Would you sign up to take a course someplace? There's no time to do that. Would you just go ahead and say, well, I'm going to go see New York City. I've never been there. No, you're not missing much, but whatever your choice would be. Could be New Orleans. It could be, I want to go to the Bahamas. Go hop on a plane and take off. What would you do? Because we know that when God sends Jesus back to us, after he does his thing and cleans up a little bit, takes care of some of the bad guys, this is all going to be destroyed. Peter talks about it. Let's read from 2 Peter verse 3, and I'll get to it at the end of the verse. Beloved, I now write you this second epistle, in both of which I stir up your pure minds by way of reminder, that you may be mindful of the words which were spoken before you by the holy prophets, and of the commandment of us, the apostles of the Lord Savior. Knowing this first, that scoffers will come in the last days. Yeah, they're out there all over the place. Walking according to their own lusts and saying, where's the promise of his coming? Where is he? You've been telling us about his coming. He's not coming. It's all a lie. Satan was right. At which point Satan wins. For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. For this they willfully forget that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, by which the world that existed perished, being flooded by the water. We have the history of the earth, creation, the flood. I'm going to jump down to verse 8. But, beloved, do not forget this one thing, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years. So since Jesus was here, it's only been 2 days. And 1,000 years is 1 day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some count slackness, but is long-suffering towards us, not willing that any should perish. The minute he ends this, people are going to have to sacrifice to be part of the kingdom. Verse 10, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. Now, we know the day of the Lord is a reference to his second coming. It's not the rapture. The rapture happens at the beginning of the tribulation. The day of the Lord happens at the end. But there's only, at most, 7 years between. And it's cut short so that somebody would live through it. There has to be a remnant to go into the millennium. So we don't really know how long. The thief of the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Everything that you work for here will be gone. Everything you've created will be gone. Therefore, since all these things will dissolve, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness? What do you do with your time? If you knew the earth was going to end, and it was out there, even if it was still 7 years in the future, what would you do with your time? None of us know when we're going to die to the earth. As Christians, we go to be with Jesus in heaven immediately. If we get raptured, we go to be with Jesus. So either way, it's a win-win. But we never know when that's going to be. It could end today or tomorrow. Not even talking about the rapture. People die on this planet every day. Young people, old people, healthy people. Every day. Thousands around the world. Do you have any confidence that you're going to be here tomorrow? Any that you have any actual evidence of? Looking for and hastening the coming of the day of the Lord, because of which the heavens will be destroyed, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. So that's Peter warning us, saying, what's important to you? We don't know when the world's going to end, but it's going to end, and it's talked about in the Bible, in prophecy. When we see all these things happening, we know the end is near. We don't know the exact time. So are you ready? What did Jesus tell us about being ready? Let's turn to Matthew. Matthew 24 is the Olivet Discourse. He's describing the end times. When we get to 25, well, at the end of 24, on, 24:36, but of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, but the Father only. But as those days of Noah, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. So he's coming. And everybody were around Noah, they were mocking him, building for a rain. It hasn't rained in a millennium. I don't know how long it had rained, been since it's rained. It may never have rained. That's my guess. It probably never rained. There was a cloud covering over the entire earth. There had to be, because there was no rainbow. When it was over, there was a rainbow. So they didn't even know what rain was. And it talks about, the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, the other left. You have no control over that. You need to be ready. So I'm going to turn to 25. Then the kingdom of heaven is likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Now 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. Which one do you want to be? Those who were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with the lamps. But while the bridegroom was delayed, Jesus is delayed. Are you ready? All slumbered and slept, and at midnight a cry was heard. Typical back then, they would send the groom out at midnight to wake everybody up, make a big deal about it. Behold, the bridegroom is coming. Go out and meet him. Then all those virgins arose, trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, No, lest you should not be enough for us, but go rather to those who sell and buy some for yourself. You don't have any? Go get some. There's no stores open at midnight. They were foolish. How are you going to be when that time comes? We don't know when the time comes. Now, the second coming, we can kind of figure out because it's in the tribulation. But we're not going to be here. We have a rapture. He's also got the servants with the money and talents and things that they were put in charge of, and they were good stewards of the master while he was away. What are you doing for the master? What will he come back finding you doing? Will you be serving him on earth? He is coming back, and you're not going to have any warning. Now, not knowing the day or the hour, that's the second coming. It at least says that. The rapture says nothing. We don't know the timing. We don't know when that's going to be. As I said it before, we can't know because Satan can't know because he's going to try to kill us. And God's going to pull us out of the way. So it's time that we focus on what we should be doing in our life right now. What if the world was going to end? Let's give it some time. 6 months, 4 months. That's time to get something accomplished. What would you do at that time? Think about it. What would you do if the world was ending? Would you focus on making more money so you could buy a bigger car or a bigger house? You wouldn't even get moved in and the world would end. So your priorities have to be based on what's coming ahead of us. We don't know the day or the hour of the second coming. We don't know when the rapture is. But they're in our future. They're in prophecy. Jesus spoke about the end times. Jesus did. We also have John writing down what Jesus was telling him in Revelation. As we heard earlier in John, and I talked about it before, he wrote about God from such a personal level, but at a magnificent level of who God was. The other Gospels are kind of writing about Jesus, who is God, but they were focusing on his point of view. John is focusing on the point of view of God, being God, the Alpha, the Omega. He was also the closest one to Jesus, who represents God here, because he is God. in human form, you've got to be ready. You've got to get your mindset around God and what's coming, and stop worrying about what's going on in the world. There's nothing you can do to stop any of this stuff. You can divert it around you, perhaps, for a little while, as long as we're down here, but after the rapture, you won't be able to stop it if you're still here. You'd better make a decision before that date, and you don't know the date, I don't know the date. You can't say, well, I've got another 6 months, I don't have to worry about it. No, you don't know that, neither do I. Nobody does. But if you're focusing on what the coming kingdom is going to do, you don't need to be focusing on earthly things. Yes, you've got to feed your family. But do you need to go out and buy a new car? No. If yours is running, you don't need to get one. You don't need to do anything to further advantage yourself on this planet, because it's going to end. You need to be putting up your stores in heaven instead of earth. Get out there and do some work for God. You go, well, I'm not a religious person, or I'm not a Bible person, or I'm not a... You can come up with all the excuses you want to not do it. It doesn't matter. Just simply do it. If you don't know how, God will show you. But you've got to get out there and do it. Tell people. Yeah, they're going to think you're crazy. Well, if they really think you're crazy, don't listen to what they say, because they're going to tell you what Satan would want you to think. But at least try and then move on. There are so many people in this world, you couldn't talk to every one of them individually on this world in your lifetime. So you can't. It's not up to us to get to the world. It's up to us to get to each individual we meet. Somebody's getting ready to leave. Don't put it off. Don't keep saying, I'll get to it tomorrow. Don't be a procrastinator. Whatever you think you want to do for God, start it today. Start it right now. When you get done with this video, go start working on what you think you should be doing for God. Talk to God is the first thing if you don't know. If you know and you've been putting it off and you've been resisting His nudging, get busy and start working on it. Whatever it is. I do a video every day. I have to study and doing my homework so that I have enough information to put up here to make it meaningful. I let God talk through me whenever I can, but I have to be prepared. I have to pray first. I have to be repentant so that we can do this interchange. And then I got to think about tomorrow. I'm not thinking about tomorrow and doing it. I'm just putting it on my schedule and putting a planning and deciding what I'm going to do. God gives me the themes. I don't come up with these themes. I have a new theme every day, and I try not to repeat, or God tries not to repeat. But sometimes some of these things need focus, so they might get a repeat. Maybe it'll be a different name, a different angle. You know, God's a giant elephant. No matter which way you look, He's going to look slightly different. So you can teach the same lesson, but from this point of view. It's getting to where you can't say things out of the Bible anymore. So I may quote something out of the Bible and not specifically say it's out of the Bible when I'm talking to people. Just so they don't feel put out. I can't go, well, the Bible says you should be doing this. No. Don't point your fingers at people and talk to them, because it's not polite. You feel put out when I did that? People in general don't like that. Your best way to teach people about whatever it is, tell them about your struggle with that problem and how God worked in your heart with that problem. That's your best way to do it. Don't come after them. Point back to yourself. Because it's like they say, when you've got your finger pointing this way, that's one finger going this way, but there's 3 to 4 fingers pointing back at you. So just start off with that attitude. That's why people sometimes struggle, and they wonder why, as a Christian, why do I struggle with this? Whatever it is. Because there's somebody out there with the same problem, and they can relate when they find out that you have a solution. Our struggling isn't necessarily because we did anything wrong. It's to prepare us to help somebody who doesn't have the connection with God that you do, and they're looking for an answer. And you've got it, because you've been there. If I wanted someone to work on my car, would I take it down to the local barber shop and ask the barber if he can fix my car? Chances are he knows how to cut hair very well, but not work on my car. So you want to hear from somebody who has experience. That's why we experience things in our lives, so that we can help people with that same problem. We always assume that when something happens, we did something wrong. Now, we may have, but it has nothing to do with how God treats us most of the time. As a Christian, God's going to continually love on us no matter what. I've got a squirrel. Okay, he's getting real close. Sometimes these squirrels here get so close, and then they look up and go, "Oh my God, I didn't see him." That's fun. We saw some deer out hiking today. We got a real good picture of one yesterday. I got to get him to, Thomas, my son, to send it to me so I can post it so you can see it. We walked right up on the deer, didn't even realize he was there. I don't know if he realized he was there. And then they just freeze and they don't move, so you got photo op time. That's the way life is sometimes. It just catches up with you. This end is going to catch up with us. Make sure your focus is right. Make sure you've got extra oil in your lamps, which means you have to go to the store and buy the oil before you need it, so you've got it. That's just a parable, but the truth is there. Whatever you're going to need to be doing for God, you need to be preparing for it and then doing it as if tomorrow were the last day. Treat this world as if it's ending tomorrow. What would you do? You love on your family. You talk to people about God without being ashamed. Because we're out of here tomorrow. Every day you can tell yourself we're out of here tomorrow, and one day you will be right. And I think it's one day soon. Okay, until we meet in the clouds, God bless.